Right, here we go. Main event time. This is the one that everybody's going to be tuning in for. We're going to be doing our own individual video for this one. It is time for us to talk about our lightweight title fight. Khabib Nurmagomedov, arguably one of the greatest fighters of all time, 28 and 0. He's going to be making another defense of his belt. He's going to be taking on a man who describes himself as the most violent man in the UFC, Justin Gaethje, 22 and 2 record. This has all the makings potentially of being an epic matchup.
Yeah, what an elite fight, elite matchup. This is number one versus number two at lightweight right now. I don't think anybody would dispute that. In the UFC, at least, I know there's a lot of great international fighters, but these are the two best lightweights in the UFC right now. Justin Gaethje coming off of that incredible performance over Tony Ferguson. And I think that Justin Gaethje is just an underrated fighter in terms of casual perspective, in terms of the betting window. I think that people think he's a brawler. People think he's a wild, puncher who just spams leg kicks and punches without much defense. I mean, at one point, I think that was a good description of Gaethje, but he has just evolved over time. He's gotten so much better, and he was a plus 200 underdog to Tony Ferguson, and he won that fight convincingly. 95% of that fight, Justin Gaethje was in control. He did get dropped briefly at the end of the second round, but that was really Tony's only success he had in the fight. Just a masterclass performance from Gaethje, where he showed the improvements in his footwork. He showed that he is more calculated and measured. He doesn't go for the kill and the knockout like he was doing in the Eddie Alvarez fight and in the Dustin Poirier fight. He's learned from those losses. He's gotten better, and I think that Justin Gaethje has never been better. The footwork, the boxing, the leg kicks that he does, I think he's one of the best fighters in the sport right now. And I'm not disrespecting Khabib, because Khabib is one of my favorite fighters. He is such a dominant at what he does. He has the best grappling in the sport. He has learned how to use the cage better than any fighter has in MMA history. But in terms of well-roundedness, in terms of who I think is the more well-rounded fighter, I got to go with Justin Gaethje. I think I've always been a little unimpressed with how underdeveloped Khabib's striking is. I mean, he really doesn't seem to be making an effort to make his striking better. I think his striking is arguably about the same as it was as when he entered the UFC. I mean, we've seen glimpses of success from him on the feet, but when you look at the guys he trains with, Tagir Ulanbekov, Umar Nurmagomedov, Saeed Nurmagomedov, these guys are high-level strikers. They come from a more taekwondo kicking background, but I just wonder how Khabib has never really evolved his striking to be able to compete with other strikers, because I mean, he makes a lot of critical mistakes in terms of footwork and punching technique on the feet, and I don't want to take too much away from Khabib, because I think he is still an incredible fighter, a very dominant fighter, and he always finds a way to get the fight to the floor. But I think that this fight will be his hardest test to get the fight to the floor. I'll pass it back to you, Carl.
See, I do personally think that Khabib has made some progress in his striking. It hasn't been massive, but if you look at his debut against, I think it was Kamal Shaloris, I mean, the guy looked like Ben Askren in there, the way he was trying to throw strikes. And yet, we go 6-7 years later, he drops Conor McGregor. So there must be some sort of improvement there, but I do agree with you, considering his training partners, there should be a big jump in terms of his stand-up. But I guess when you're so good at grappling, it's maybe not an area that you're going to mainly have all your focus into. The big test for me in this fight is going to be Justin Gaethje's takedown defense. Now, he hasn't been taken down since being in the UFC. There was like a brief moment where he almost shot for a takedown when he fought Eddie Alvarez, and he did briefly go onto his back. It was almost like the MMA gods were saying, what are you doing going for takedowns? You Justin Gaethje, get back up. I do have concerns in that area though. I've been listening to some interviews with Justin. He admits he's not great off his back, and I saw a fight in WSOF when he fought Brian Cobb, and Brian Cobb managed to get him down, and he had no idea what he was doing when he got taken down. So I am a little bit concerned of how Justin's going to handle it if and when Khabib does get that takedown.
Yeah, so one thing you said that I'm going to disagree with, you said the fight is about takedown defense. I actually think the fight is about footwork and geography more than it is takedown defense. What I say when I mean geography, I heard this used by Teddy Atlas, and he means where the fight takes place in the ring, in the cage. And Justin Gaethje is very aware that this fight needs to stay in the center of the
Hmm.
cage. He is aware that Khabib is at his best when he puts you against the cage. And also, I've been listening to interviews with Gaethje. I did not hear where he admitted that. I think I have heard him admit that, but I haven't seen the Brian Cup fight. But Gaethje is very aware of where he needs to keep the fight. He knows that I think he's very aware that he is not a better wrestler than Khabib, but he knows that he has the footwork and the boxing to make it hard for Khabib to be able to shoot on him, which is, I think, a very underrated aspect of this fight because when Gaethje is pressuring Khabib, if he starts off pressuring, that immediately makes it harder for Khabib to shoot a takedown. When he's on the back foot, it's harder for you to get the momentum to shoot a takedown forward. And then when Khabib is coming forward at Gaethje, he's going to have to deal with the jab, the punches of Gaethje, the calf kick of Justin Gaethje. So no matter where Khabib is moving backwards or forward in this fight, I think it's going to be difficult for him to get those takedowns off. And especially in the middle of the cage, Khabib is not a great open space wrestler. He can shoot takedowns together, but we even saw Conor McGregor have some success stuffing the takedown in the center of the cage.
That
He had
first
that
scramble,
long
Connor did very well.
yeah, he had some success, and I think that's when I mean, Connor also not a lifelong wrestler. He is a striker at heart. We're dealing with Justin Gaethje, a lifelong wrestler, a Division One collegiate wrestler, which is some of the hardest athletics you could possibly be involved in my opinion, college D1 wrestling. And Gaethje knows he has that. He just knows that he's more comfortable in wrestling exchanges. He has that background. He has that experience where Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor didn't. I'm gonna try not to talk too much for this one. I'll pass it back to you, Carl, before I keep going with my analysis in this one. So what do you think about what I just said?
I totally agree with you. I actually got it on the notes on the screen here. I think that Octagon control is going to be a big factor. And I do think that while Khabib is very good, a lot of his success does come against the fence. So I would like to see Justin Gaethje, and I think he's capable of doing it, try and keep the fight in the centre. Because when Conor was stuffing the takedowns in the third round, and you have to remember Conor won that third round, he kept the fight in the centre and he was able to have a lot more success stuffing them. Same with Gleason Tebow, same with, dare I say, Ali Aquinta stuffed a lot of takedowns when they were in the centre of the octagon. So I agree with you, I think Justin is going to need to keep it there. But we've seen so many people come up against Khabib Nurmagomedov, and we talk about striking power, we talk about a wrestling background, and he still powers through them. I think the key for me with Khabib is Khabib isn't a supreme technician when it comes to takedown, but what he does very well, he'll shoot from a long way out, they'll stuff that first takedown, and then he immediately chain wrestles and gets another one straight away, and that's how he gets you against the fence, and that's how he gets you down.
Yeah, incredible chain wrestling. Doesn't have the most, singular dominant shots, but as you mentioned, he chains it together. He's tough. He's extremely hard to get off you, and he usually works you to the cage. He'll shoot in the center of the cage, chain you together, work you back to the cage. And I just haven't seen a lot of great takedown defense from the opponents that he's fought. I mean, most notably in the recent fights against McGregor and Poirier. Poirier, notably, I thought Dustin Poirier fought so absolutely terribly against Khabib. It was crazy to watch. I mean, Poirier had been preparing for that fight for so long. I'm a massive fan of Dustin Poirier. He's an incredible fighter, but it just looked like he was not mentally ready for that fight. It didn't look like he was technically ready either. He did not practice the right things. He was jumping guillotine. He was trying to get back up to his feet after he got taken down. If you look at Conor McGregor, he actually did pretty well in terms of game planning for Khabib. He got taken down early, but he didn't even try to stand up in round one. He saved his energy, and he didn't waste any time trying to get back up, and that's what a lot of guys have problems with. Ali Quinta did this, Dustin Poirier did this. The second they get taken down, they put their hands on the mat, they get to their knees, they try to stand up, and Khabib is a master at dragging you back to the
Mm-hmm.
floor. So if Gaethje gets taken down against the cage, I don't see him getting up. I don't see him having the get-ups or the jiu-jitsu or anything to get back up to his feet. So I honestly don't see this fight being competitive. I think that whoever starts winning the fight early will likely win the entire fight. So if Khabib gets Gaethje down early, I don't see Gaethje adapting late and overcoming that. And if Gaethje starts outstriking Khabib early, I don't see Khabib somehow getting through that striking of Gaethje. So I don't see it being competitive, honestly. I don't think it's going to be like a back and forth type of fight, sort of like the Conor fight was, where they traded rounds. So yeah, I'll go back to you, Carl, for a few minutes.
I'm in a very similar boat, but as much as I do like Justin Gaethje, and I do think there are a lot of traits which I do like about him, I do trust his takedown defense. I do think it's a lot better than some of Khabib's other opponents, and I think especially considering the work he's done with Trevor Whitman, I think he's going to benefit from not having a crowd there. Because he's going to hear every single instruction that Trevor is going to give him. And in my opinion, Trevor Whitman is up there with Eugene Bareman in terms of the best minds in the sport right now. But
yeah, fully agree.
It's going to come down to that first takedown. And we've said so many times that Conor's going to be the man to stop Khabib, or Dustin's going to have the jiu-jitsu to stop him. We've said that so many times, I can't root against Khabib. I think he's going to get it done in the first 2 rounds.
So one thing I'll mention is that the last time I saw Gaethje stuff takedowns was in the Luis Firmino fight in 2016. There were a lot of frantic scrambles and sprawls in that fight. Gaethje definitely had a lot of nervous energy when he got taken down. He was trying to explode back up. And I'm a little worried about that in this fight. I think that if he does that same thing here, he will get dragged back down to the canvas. He will waste energy. He will likely stay on bottom versus Khabib. But I trust him to do what Conor did and just to stay composed if he gets taken down, to just kind of count it as we lost this round. Let's stay defensively sound and not get submitted. But I honestly don't think it's going to come down to the first takedown defense. I think it's going to come down to how the first 30 seconds of the fight go. Like the way that Conor pressured Khabib and got him on the back foot, the way that Michael Johnson did so as well and had a lot of success, I think that's going to be very indicative here, because if Gaethje can start putting Khabib on the back foot right away, I think we're going to start to see Khabib shoot some sloppy takedowns, and we're going to see Justin Gaethje shows some pretty good takedown defense, because when Khabib is moving backwards, he's just not an effective wrestler. He's going to have to be pressuring Gaethje, getting Gaethje moving backwards to shoot takedowns. And I just don't see how he does that when he doesn't have the striking tools to threaten Gaethje really at all. I mean, he could, of course, wing that overhand right and catch him like he did Conor, but I just don't think that's a consistent thing to happen here. So I'm actually going to be going with Justin Gaethje to pull off the upset here. I mean, early in the week, or since the fight has been announced, I had been excited about Justin Gaethje's chances. I had been rooting for him, but always in the back of my mind, I thought I would still be picking Khabib. But after doing more tape study, after really thinking about the fight, I really think I got to trust my gut and go with Gaethje. One thing you mentioned is Trevor Whitman. Trevor Whitman is such a great MMA coach. He was on the podcast with Rogan and Gaethje, and they respect Khabib. They know how good Khabib is, but they also recognize where his strengths are, where his weaknesses are, and I just think that they are at the place and time right now where they have game plans so well. They're in such great sync. They have good training partners. I mean, Team Elevation is one of the best right now. Kamaru Usman was just training with Gaethje not that long ago, so he's got a ton of experience with cage work, with takedowns. I think the timing is right for Justin Gaethje. He's made the right improvements. He has the boxing, the leg kicks, and the footwork to make this fight harder than it needs to be for Khabib. And I don't think that he has the takedown defense to stop the takedowns of Khabib. I think that if Khabib gets in, collects his hands behind Gaethje's waist, I think that Khabib will get him down and keep him down. But I don't think that Gaethje allows Khabib to get close enough to get those takedowns. And it might seem like a bold prediction because Khabib has gotten everybody down. But when you look at the way that Khabib aggressively charges in for those takedowns, he's very reckless and he gets away with a lot of mistakes there. And I think that Justin Gaethje has the wrestling background, he's got the footwork, and he's got the offensive striking tools to make Khabib pay for those mistakes here for the first time in his career. So I'm going to be going with Gaethje to get, I think it'll be a finish, honestly. I think we see Khabib likely show an insane chin. He's going to probably show incredible toughness, just like Tony Ferguson did. But eventually, I think that Khabib's lead leg is going to be getting shut down from calf kicks. He's going to be eating more punches than he has in his career. And I think we eventually see Gaethje knock Khabib out in round 3. So it's a crazy bold prediction, but I am predicting that Khabib loses his undefeated streak here and Gaethje is the man to do it.